All right, today we are going to study something new. We are learning about percents. Remember how last month we've been learning about adding and subtracting fractions? And we've done adding and subtracting decimals. Today we will learn how to convert fractions to decimals and percents. By the end of this class, I'm hoping that everyone will be able to do that. Now, how many of you have heard the word percent before? How many of you have heard it being used somewhere? Wow, I see a lot of you have heard this word before. So I am trying to think, why do we need to learn about percent in math? How is it something that is going to be used in real life? Where will I be able to use it? Or where have you heard it being used? Or have you seen it somewhere? Maybe they have it written somewhere. So if you see on your table group, you have a green sheet. I want you to work with everyone at your table group and make a list of places you might have heard or you might have seen the word percent being used. Okay? Can someone repeat what I am asking you to do? Raise your hand if you understand what I just asked you to do. Okay. Joanna.
You're telling us to write on the paper what percent, where have you seen the word?
Where have you seen the word, or where have you heard about this word, or where do you think this would be used in real life? So go ahead, only using your green sheet. You have 3 minutes. Make a quick list. Make sure you're discussing with everyone on your table group because they might have some ideas that you might not have. One person can write and everyone else is helping this person write. Make 1, 2, 3, 4 and you can write. You can make a list. It doesn't have to be complete sentences. We're only using the green sheet right now. Are you helping your group? Is everyone talking and discussing?
So we just sort of like whatever we thought we say first and then we all agree and we say
Okay.
And 20% is like the food is 50% off.
I know.
All right, starting with who's ready to share their list first? I'm only looking for one thing from their list so that everyone gets a chance to share, okay? I think we'll start with table group 1. So table group 1, tell me one thing or one place that you have seen the word percent being used.
I've seen percent when I'm downloading a game.
Oh, that's interesting. So when you are downloading a game or app, that's when we see percent. That's correct. And thank you for using complete sentences, Samson. Table group 2, do you have one thing that you would like to share? When you're playing a game on some dog and they have a percent question. So sometimes when we are playing games online. Table group 3.
Like you see percent at a store.
At a store. Okay. And table group 4.
On a tag where it says 50% caught in on.
Oh, on an item, correct. Or at a store, on an item. Table group 5.
I heard percent on tests is when we say 100%, like if you get like a perfect score.
When you get a perfect score, that's like when we're discussing scores on a test. We talk about scores or what do you need to score in order to get a proficient advanced score or 100%, what it means. Great. Table group 6.
Laptops when it says low battery.
Okay, laptops, especially when it shows you how much of the battery is remaining. And table group 7.
In commercials, when you see like, buy this and you get 50% off the next one.
Okay. So they're saying buy one and you get the next one for 50% off. So you're saying in commercials you see that. Okay. And would someone else like to share? For example, my favorite has to be the stores. When I go shopping and I see those 50% off signs, that makes me feel like, wow, now I should definitely shop here. So maybe by the end of this class, we will learn if I have enough money to buy an item, because now I'm able to calculate if I can find what is 50% off an item. Where else have we heard? In something that we might be studying in our class. Kevin?
And coupons?
Okay, we do get coupons for a certain amount off, correct? Maritza?
On the back of the bulletin, our fifth graders scored 100% on the test.
Oh, on our bulletin, when Mrs. Millbrook sends stuff home, she probably tells you what percent of the students scored advanced or proficient. That's correct. Where else have we heard? Riley?
Like when somebody tells you something percent of your body is water.
Correct. When we were doing human body systems, we were talking about how human body is approximately 60% water. That's right. Emmanuel?
When video games are loading, it says like 91%.
When video games are loading and just like apps? Raphael? At cash registers, you see or the keys will show you that there is a percent sign so that they can take that percent off. Anthony?
Battery percent.
Battery percent, we already have that. Lysander?
Juice percent, like when they lie to you about the 100% apple juice or mango juice.
Okay, so they said this is 100% apple juice, so they're telling you what is the content of that juice, correct? Mariah?
On the back of sodas or anything, it says like how, the percent of calories from the fat or percent of sugar.
So it tells you the dietary intake, how much sugar this one has or how much sodium this particular product has. Excellent. So I see a lot of you have noticed these, but now we will learn a little bit more about what is percent. Okay? If you see the word percent, I can kind of break it into two pieces, per and cent. Okay? Per means each or for every, and cent means 100. I know fifth graders are learning about roots and affixes, and we have several other words that you will learn about that use the same root word cent. For example, century. They're talking about a century in history. How many years would that be? How many years would that be, Angel?
About 100 years ago.
It is exactly 100 years. A century is 100 years. Okay? If someone is having a centennial celebration, that really means that they are celebrating 100th anniversary of something. Okay? So we have lots of words that use that same root word. Okay? What about money? Where do we hear the word cent? Where do we hear the word cent when you're using money? Klein?
In pennies, dimes, nickels, pretty much coins.
Pretty much coins when we're talking about. So, for example, if I have $1, okay, how many cents would that be? Nikki? It would mean 100 cents. Okay? But how much is 1 cent? How much would that be equal to? 1 cent would be equal to what part of the dollar is that? 1 out of what part would that make it for me? Marie? 1 out of 100. 1 out of 100. Okay? 1 cent is 1 out of 100. That means it's 1 part out of 100 parts. Or can we write it as 1/100th of a dollar? Okay? It's 1 part out of 100. Okay. Now the word percent has a special symbol, and from our conversation I can see a lot of you have noticed that symbol. The word percent is represented by this symbol. Okay? So if I write 5%, It's the same thing. If I don't want to write the word percent, I can write the same thing as 5 and just use the symbol for the word percent. If I decide to take the symbol away, I will either have to put back the word percent, or 5% means 5 out of 100. And that's kind of easy to remember. I can write this as 5, and if you see this slanted line, it goes down as my 1. Do you see 2 dots here? Okay, they are kind of there to remind you that you can put 2 zeros, and they go, 1 0 goes here, 1 0 goes here. Again, that is something to help you remember that percent is always talking about something out of 100. Kevin?
It's like the same symbol as dividing.
As the?
As dividing.
Correct. So it really means 5 out of 100, or 5 divided by 100. Correct. Okay. When we are looking at this, it is same as thinking that it is a ratio. Percent is basically a ratio, a special type of fraction if you want to think about it. But in this case, it will always have 100 as its denominator. Every time you need to find percent, you will need 100 in the denominator's place. Okay, thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, good. Let me show you another example of what I'm talking about. For example, there are 100 students in 5th grade and 25 of them are absent today. What percent of students are absent today? Okay, now let's look at our question carefully. First, we are going to be using the buck system. So let's review our buck system because this is my word problem. Okay, let's use it. What should I do first? B. What do we do first? Let's do it as a whole class. B. Put a box the question. Okay, so what is my question here? Who can help me figure out what is my question? How should I box it? Raimundo.
Where it says what percent of students are
Absent.
absent today.
Correct. So I'm going to put a box around my question so I know this is the one I'm solving. Okay? You underline the important information. Okay? What important information will I need to find this? What numbers would I need? Adeline.
100,
Okay, so I can probably underline my 100 students.
25,
And I will probably need 25 too. Okay? And then circle the vocabulary. Let's do this. Circle the vocabulary. Okay. So what vocabulary word do I see in here? Rita.
percent,
Okay, so I should probably circle my percent. They're asking me to find percent. And from the discussion we just had, remember, percent is always out of 100. It's, if you think of this, how many are the total students?
100,
How many are absent today?
25.
Okay, we should probably draw a model to see how that works. If I break this into 4 equal pieces, this tells me that from here to here, this total represents my 100 students. And I have, if I break it down, I have 25 students here, 25 students here, 25 students here, 25 students here. 25 and 25, 50, and 25, 75, and 2500. So that is all of my students together. But how many of them are absent? 25. So I am going to shade this part out because this tells me this group of students here is absent. So what is my whole? What is my total number? Kevin?
75.
No, those are the ones that are present. But how many do I have in all?
100.
Correct. So that goes and becomes part of my denominator. Now, what part of the whole is absent today? Ashley?
25.
So 25 are absent today. That's right. And do I have a denominator which shows me that it's out of 100? Yes. So can I write it as a percent now? So this would be same as saying 25, and I can use the symbol. Remember, the 100 goes away. And when I take the 100 away, I can use the symbol in its place. And I can say 25% of the students are absent today. So we just change our ratio over here into percent. Okay? Any questions about this? Okay, are we good? Yes. Okay, let's look at another one. This is a little more tricky than the first one. Look at this. I have a big container, or you can think of it as a big bucket. And I have 100 balls inside. Okay, so I can probably put that information somewhere here. That total equals 100 balls. So we know. And how do we know? Look on the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I know that from here to here, it's 10. Okay? What about on this side? If we look at it vertically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So from this point to this point, it's again 10. So how many do you think that would make in all inside the container? What kind of operation can I use to figure that number out? What kind of operation can I use? Tatiana?
Multiplication.
I can use multiplication. So it tells me if I do 10 times 10, it will give me 100 balls, 100 balls in all. Okay? Now look at this. I am going to color one of these purple. Okay? Now, how many balls out of how many balls are colored purple? How many? Monica?
1.
Out of?
100.
Okay, so I can say 1 out of 100 balls is colored purple. Okay? Is there a way I can write this in the fraction form? How can I write this so that it looks like a fraction to me? Emmanuel?
1 out of 100.
So I should probably write 1 over 100. Is that what you're asking me to do? Okay. Remember when we were trying to learn how to read numbers? Who can read this for me? If I don't want to say 1 over 100, is there another way to read this number? How can I read this number? Nicholas?
1%.
It is 1%. Correct, because it's 1 out of 100. But what else can you see when you're seeing this from a small number point of view, when we're talking about place values and when we talked about decimals? How can we read 1 over 100?
1 out of 100.
Correct. Anyone else? Gabe?
1.
0.1. Do you think it's 0.1? Why do you think it's 0.1, Gabe?
Because you said to put it into a decimal.
So you converted it to a decimal and you think it's 0.1? Okay. How many of you agree how many of you agree with Gabe? Is there someone who has a different answer? Mariah?
0.01.
Okay, so Mariah seems to think it's 0.01. Why do you say that, Mariah?
Because the 1 is in the 100th place and the 0 is in the 10th place.
Correct. And when we're reading our numbers, remember you say the number and you say the place value of the last number. This was your 10th. This was your hundredth. So this is 100th. So what I was trying to see if some of you can remember that we can also read this number as 100th. Okay? So we can say that this is same as 0.01. Now look at this one. What if I decide to shade in all of these? How many did I shade green? How many? Okay, we know these are rows of 10, so I see that it's 10. So it's 10 out of how much? 100. It can also be read as, Maritza?
10 hundredths.
10 hundredths. Can everyone say that?
10 hundredths.
Okay, so if it's 10 hundredths, how can I write that as a decimal? I want to write 10 hundredths as a decimal. What should I do, Marie? 0.001. Okay. Okay. What place value is this? Tenth, hundredth, thousandth. Okay. Now what I just wrote is not 10 hundredth. It became 1,000th. But I'm looking for 10 hundredth. What should I do, Klein? Point 0.10, correct. So if we write 0.10, it becomes 10. And I see that the last number has the place value hundredth. So it's 10 hundredth. What percent would that be? 10 out of 100. What percent would that be? What percent? Kobe? Correct, 10%. That's same as saying 10%. What if now I am going to shade 1, 2, 7. Okay? I just shaded in 7. And maybe I could probably add in this whole row here. Think that it's all shaded in. All of the balls here are shaded in. Okay? So 10 plus 7. How many in all are red?
17 out of 100.
Okay, I see some of you are already getting it. 17 out of the 100 balls are red in color. What percent would that be? What percent? What percent? Raimundo?
70%.
Correct. It would make 17%. Now let's think about it. How can I say this number? It's 17 hundredth. So how would I write that as a decimal? Clarissa?
0.17.
0.17 or 0 and 17 hundredth. Good. Okay. Questions about this? Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so what is the most important thing we need to keep in mind when we're trying to make a number into percent? Something that's really super important for us to have in place, and then it's easier to do percent because something is there. Emmanuel?
Percent is always something out of 100.
Correct. Percent is always something out of 100. Do you agree with what Emmanuel just said?
Yes.
Thumbs up? Okay. But do you see that it's not always possible for one to make 100 balls or 100 of something? So what we can use instead is a grid. So if you see something like this, it's called a 10 by 10 grid. And what it does is it breaks your big grid into equal size squares. How many squares do you think a 10 by 10 grid would have? We are looking at this one. How many squares do you think it would have? Okay, talk at your table group. Does everyone agree? Okay, so who would like to share how many many small squares, equal size squares are in this grid? If this is a 10 by 10 grid, how many equal size squares do we have? How many equal size squares does a 10 by 10 grid have? Samson? 100, correct. It's just like when we were counting the balls, we had 10 on this side and 10 on this side, and 10 times 10 would make it 100. Just so that you can see, I labeled one of my grids to show you that there are actually 100 small squares. Okay? So what if the teacher wants you to get 100% on a test? How would I show 100% using a grid like this? Now somebody said you have either 100% or your teacher expects you to get 100% on this test. What are they really asking you to do? What are they expecting you to get? What do they want you to do? Ashley? What, get 100 out of 100 on your test? That's right. So if I shade all of these squares and all of these squares and this and this and this and this and this and this, how many squares did I shade in all? How many squares did I shade in all? Kevin?
100.
So I did shade my 100 squares out of how many total squares? How many total squares did we have in the first place? Tatiana?
100.
100 out of 100. And that's what happens when you get 100% on your test. That means you got 100 out of 100 questions right. And I can probably write this as 100 out of 100. What percent did you get if you have 100 out of 100? What percent? What percent would that be? Mariah?
100%.
So you got 100%. What about decimal? Is there a decimal in here? I'm not sure. 100, 100 out of 100? What's happening here? Is there a decimal involved here? Or 100 over 100 really means what? And you have to go back to your fractions and think of when you were simplifying fractions or when you are asked to give the answer in the simplest form, what is happening here? Raimundo? If we forget about the percent for now, okay? Okay, don't worry about the percent. 100 over 100 is equals what in the simplest form? Say that again. 0.100. Okay. Just think about your fraction in the simplest forms. A number divided by the number itself. What should you get? Maritza?
1.
1. Remember, that's when we say 100 over 100 equals 1. Okay. Does 1 have a decimal point? It is a whole number. Does it have a decimal point? No? Can it have a decimal point though? Okay, where should I put my decimal point? Anthony?
1. Point 0
1.0
and 0.
and another 0. Okay. Is 1 same as 1.00? Is the value the same? Yes, it is. If you want, you can add a decimal point and add zeros. That won't necessarily change the value. A lot of time, we don't write the zeros because this is a whole number. Okay? Now, you have a white sheet at your desk, and you have some questions that I'm hoping you will be able to do on your own. The squares are already shaded in for you, except for the last one where I've given you a percent. So see if you can count and find the fraction and change it to the decimal and percent.